So we are really entering some pretty juicy stuff, as a friend of mine would say. We've been going through this text and we've been walking our way through this path to liberation, literally a path of no more suffering. And we left off last week really looking at the nature of mind itself and sort of how we get in trouble, and recognizing that our fundamental nature is obscured with a lot of busyness, a lot of what we call karma and klesha, these habits, these obscurations that really limit me from recognizing my actual Buddha nature that's within. It's just obscured. And that we've created these habits and tendencies and delusions that we've nurtured over many lifetimes. And so we talked about how do we really start unraveling that mess. It's like a big knot. And fundamentally, there's a very clear path. And at the start, it's really stop making it messier, right? Let's stop getting angry. Let's stop getting resentful. Let's stop grabbing onto self-importance, as we were talking earlier, the sort of source of it all, right? Self-cherishing attitude is what really gets us into trouble. And it's interesting because we can have this idea that, you know, this intellectual concept that of the idea that I'm not the center of the universe. People have heard that before, right? But isn't it fascinating how quickly we can become the center of the universe? I mean, just lightning fast. You know, and I had a terrible day. Really? Like, does that even... I had a terrible day, you know, or worse yet, this is a terrible day. There's 7 billion human beings out there. There's a lot of moving parts. There's all this stuff going on, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. You know, I had a different plan. I had an aspiration. I wanted something to be like this, and this happened, and it was awful. And then that terrible day turns out to be, well, something else arose, and now it's a good day. You know, but all this is revolving around me. Everything, you know, is about me. This is really the crux of the matter. It's the glue that binds us to samsara. It is the source of our suffering. And if we're going to start unraveling that, we want to sort of start to observe the nature of, you know, who I really am, whatever this I is, and what is the true nature of my mental afflictions. And we start noticing that the nature of mental affliction, anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, depression, on, resides in my mind stream. And it's not out there. And it's actually my misperception of how things arise and come and go that creates a lot of problems. So the answer is to see clearly. So everything in Buddhism is very straightforward. The whole path to liberation is to see things accurately. That's all. Not easily done, but it is the path. The path is to recognize the interdependent nature of things and our own nature and see it more accurately. And the working hypothesis is that if I actually were to see things accurately, this non-dual nature of phenomenon, and there would be absolutely no cause, no reason, no rationale to create any karma that would limit me. I wouldn't do it. It would be literally insane. So how do we clear this? And we talked about last week is the idea, first we stop making it messier, right? We want to stop this idea of being the center of the universe and trying to arrange the whole rest of it to suit my needs, and start giving myself a little more room here and understand that I am one among many, and that how I appear or the thoughts that arise are an interdependent relationship with who's in front of me, what's going on around me, how I perceive myself, whether I feel good today or whether I don't feel good today. All that's influencing how I perceive whatever's happening. And so that gives me a little more spaciousness. And I also start to realize that my thoughts and feelings don't last. They come and go. And this guy labeled John is still here. But these thoughts, and I'm still here. And then that terrible day that I had, a year and a half ago, I don't even remember, right? When I was in it, it was pretty serious, though. And maybe it was a week ago, and I don't remember. Or that really happy, wonderful thing that happened to us two weeks ago. What was that again? I forgot. It came and it went. But when I was there, it was really cool. And I was going to treasure it, not forget it forever. And so we started to notice that things change. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, whatever John is, changes and shifts. My perception of myself today is very different than it was 5 years ago. And it'll be very different 5 years from now if I'm still around. And so we start to just, explore this in a more accurate way. We start to recognize this transient nature of John and of life and how I feel and situations and how they change. And I start realizing I am one of many moving parts, and things arise within interdependence upon each other and the conditions that create them. And already I have a lot more space to maneuver. Already. Let's see how this thing works, and how do I fit into this web of life, and then, how do I really start making it meaningful? And so foundationally then, to stop creating more mess, is I start doing more things that are ethical and virtuous. I create good karma, good merit, spiritual merit even becomes really the potential that we want to get to. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, just being kind, just being thoughtful, just recognizing the value in others. This creates a lot more spaciousness in my mind, and we know that if I stop creating the harmful karma that really limits me, that really creates my suffering, I can start creating some space. And so the foundation of all spiritual growth is ethics. Whatever tradition you're looking in, it's ethics. It's ground force. And so, number one, we just start working on good, ethical, virtuous behavior and stop doing those harmful things. So I stopped making it messy. And then we talked about, okay, so I stop doing the harmful things, I start doing the virtuous things, and then there's practices to purify the harmful mental afflictions I've already created. And so as we enter into this path, that alone is a really solid practice. Every day to wake up and go, wow, what are these actions that I'd like to stop doing that create so much problem in my life? And what are the actions that I would like to do that's going to create a lot more virtue and peace and harmony? And then every evening do a nice little purification practice, calling to mind the things I didn't do very well. And we have a practice called the 4 opponent powers, and we can just purify those. So every night we wash away. Every day we set an intention, we carry this motivation, and this is a really solid practice when we imbue it with wisdom. That's where we brought in the idea of recognizing the interdependent nature of things, and just really trying to make this life useful. This leads to this path of enlightenment, and within it are kind of 5 mind streams or 5 paths that ultimately lead to liberation. And so we got to the first, the entry level, the entry of the path, and the entry to that path is renunciation. So when I start realizing that there's nothing here in this sort of conditioned existence that I keep wanting to grab onto to make me happy, I can start grasping onto the reality of things. And essentially the idea of renunciation is that I start renouncing delusional states of mind. It's really that simple. I stop thinking you are an idiot, or you are a wonderful person, or you're the cause of my problems, or, you're a jerk, or you're annoying, or you're funny, or you're this, or you're that. Because none of that holds up under any type of evaluative process. That very person I find funny and interesting, somebody thinks an idiot. Person I don't like, somebody thinks they're wonderful. And I start realizing these labels I put on anyone, it doesn't work. And the same person I used to love last year, I think I hate them this year. How'd that happen? How can the person I've had a friendship with for 10 years become that person I can't be in a room with? And we think it's them. We think it's them. And then we say things like, man, they changed. Yeah, have you met anyone who hasn't? We all change all the time. So we start seeing how this mind has got us in this sort of wheel of inconsistency, of traps, of labels, and labels that don't work, and we reify them. Every time we think of the person we don't like, we just think of them as that person, or the person we really like, we think of them as this person, and we think that that really captures who they are. And we can think of a lot of people we don't even know, and we have an image of them, you know. I always think of like Robert Redford. I like Robert Redford. Never met the guy, you know. But it's funny, I have this sort of take on who he is as a person. I've never met him, never hung out with him. I have no idea what he has for breakfast or how he treats his dog. I don't know. Right? But I have this whole thing in my mind about who he is and what kind of guy he is. And I don't know. You know, what's it to base on? And has he been the same guy he was 10 years ago? Or has he changed? Is he the same guy 20 years ago? Because mostly I'm thinking of somebody a long time ago. I don't know. So, but our mind doesn't question any of that. Our mind says, well, that's Robert Redford. He's like this. I know that guy. I love that guy. He's great. As if it's true. And then we label ourselves in particular ways, right? I'm a morning person, I'm a night person, I'm this kind of person, I'm a night person, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. And then we stick these labels on ourselves, and then those are true. And yet, heck, can they all change? Of course. Trust me, I was not a morning person, ever. And you go to the monastery, you wake up at 5 every morning, you become a morning person. It's amazing how that works pretty quickly after a couple months. I wasn't very good with language. You hang out in a place where they don't speak English, suddenly you start picking up another language pretty quick. It's amazing how that works. We adapt to our new environments. We're able to change quite a bit. So this is just starting to understand, wow, this world that we live in is not a very stagnant place, and it's not this objective world outside of me. It's actually a very subjective experience that I'm having at all times. And so we renounce the delusion that there is this outer world that exists in a particular way that I see it, and that if it would just line up just so I could be happy. Because that's really the problem, right? Couldn't we just make it the way I'd like? If I got the right job and made the right money, and man, if I got heated seats in my car, I could be happy, man. And if all these things would come up just so. And we'll spend our whole life on a hamster wheel trying to arrange that. And even though right now we can sit here and see how ridiculous that is, we'll walk out that door and we'll jump right on that hamster wheel. Plan the next vacation, the next thing, and what will make me happy. And then we're happy for, an hour until something else happens. So that's the delusion. The delusion is that I exist in this very independent way, and others exist in a very independent way, and that there's this world that operates as I see it, and that the causes of my mental afflictions, anger, resentment, frustration, etc., are because other people are doing something to me, or that life's not fair, which is an interesting thing. So when we start saying, hey, I don't want to play that game anymore, then we become a renunciant. A renunciant says, I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon, or I'm not going to play that tune, and I'm not going to be trapped by a very busy mind that is constantly dragging me around from one thought and fear and worry and concern to the next. And I'm going to start engaging in the world more accurately. I'm going to renounce all this nonsense. Then we enter the first of the 5 paths, which is the path of accumulation. And it's a path of accumulation because at this stage of the path, what we're really accumulating is spiritual merit. And at this stage, we're going to engage in practices that subdue the mind. So this, as we enter, we start subduing the mind that wants to take us on that ride, that obsessive, compulsive, delusional mind that reacts, that labels, that jumps in on things, that just, keeps us up at night worrying about something. I'm going to tell my wife real quick, okay? She's not here. I'm probably not watching from home. But it's just funny because this is the mind, right? So she really needed to get a good night's sleep the other night. Really needed to. And I've been congested, so my breathing's pretty loud. So if we go to sleep together, she's not going to sleep because I'm loud. So I said, well, honey, why don't you go to bed first? So you're asleep before I come in. And then, I'll wait out here a half hour, 45 minutes, and I'll go in, you'll be asleep, and it'll be fine. Good plan, right? So it sounds like a good plan, but she goes in to get ready for sleep, and you know what her mind tells her? I better hurry up and go to sleep before he gets here. And then the mind starts feeling the pressure, like, oh my God, it's been 20 minutes, I'm still awake, he's going to be in here, I'm never going to get to. And then this mind kicks in, right? So she comes out 45 minutes later, miserable, tired, and couldn't go to sleep because of the pressure of needing to go to sleep before I came in. Right? So, but we can relate to this with our mind, right? It's just such a great analogy. We can't just tell our mind, you know what? Let's just relax and breathe, okay? Let's just relax and breathe, and let's go to sleep, and it'll be okay. The mind will say, oh no, he's going to be here in 10 minutes, man. He snores like whatever, So, something as basic as that lets us know how little control we have in our own lives. When we can't even relax and go to sleep. We can't even relax. We can't even let go of a worry that's not even based in reality. We can sit there and go, worrying about this won't help. And your mind will go, yeah, so what? We're still going there, and it'll go. So as we enter into this part of the path, we recognize we have this mind that is really the source of our mental and emotional suffering. It's there. And so we need to subdue it. We need to train the mind. And so these practices, as we enter into the path of accumulation, we're accumulating spiritual merit, and we're creating the conditions of a stable mind. And so this is what we do, shamatha practice, calm abiding meditation, to really stabilize our mind. So the practice that we did at the start is a straightforward shamatha practice. Shamatha practice number 1 is we relax. We learn to relax. So it's got 3 stages. Foundation, relax without falling asleep. And that's a really solid practice right there. We're not very used to being relaxed and alert. Number 1, can I be relaxed but very keenly alert? Because our mind is in one of 2 places generally. Very busy or kind of dull. So we either have a lot going on, and it's really hard to really be present in this moment, because my mind, wants to go on to something else. Or, I'm having trouble focusing, and I can't listen very well, and I'm too, I can't really bring my attention there. How often is our mind just keenly where we would like it, calmly with a relaxed body? And you'll notice when you sit in meditation, it's not that easy to do, right? To just sit, relax your body, and rest your awareness right here. Our minds tell us, man, I got a whole lot of other things I'd rather be doing. Or we start falling asleep. So level 1 is just learning to relax the body and not fall asleep. So we go between laxity and excitation, and we just rest it. So as we learn to do this, that is a practice that we can do every day, again and again and again. And at some point, I will actually be able to have a relaxed body and have an alert mind. It can happen. But it doesn't happen on its own. That's the other story. If we don't take some action to develop this calm abiding, the mind just does its thing. So that's stage one. So relaxation. Now, after I've learned to relax, not fall asleep, and then rest my mind on an object like the breath, after a while, I will actually be able to keep it on the breath the whole time. I mean, it might be coarse. I mean, my mind might be drifting, but I'm still aware of my breath. But after a while, I'll actually be able to, throughout the whole meditation, not have my mind take off. And then that's stability. So first relaxation, then stability. And after a while, if I choose to pay attention to my breath for 24 minutes, I can actually just do that. Imagine having that level of attention. And I can just do it and just be here. Rest my mind. And now, initially, that stability isn't super refined. You know, it's like I'm aware of my breath, my mind's thinking about that or something pops up, but I haven't lost track of the breath. But over time, my attention becomes very clear and then vivid. The third part is what we call vividness, this high resolution, this ability to just purely rest my awareness with laser beam, just awareness, to rest exactly, precisely on whatever I choose to. And then being able to do that, you know, we have this really calm, abiding state of mind. Relaxation, stability, vividness. So the analogy I use all the time is the roots of the tree, relaxation. Trunk of the tree, stability, leaves are vividness. This is just fundamental, and one of the common problems that people get into as they engage in a practice is they don't want to have deep roots, let alone a trunk. They just pretty much want leaves, right? Like I go to a Buddhist practice, I want the highest level initiation. I want, you know, here, let me start with Vipassana. Okay, that's the highest level meditation. But I don't have any roots, I don't have any stability, and I don't have anything to actually rest. If I get any awareness, it'll be fleeting. So at this stage of the path, we don't want to go, you know, there's no fast pass, you know, there's no, you know, that little secret mantra or blessing that just makes it all quicker. The idea is that in this path of accumulation, as we enter, we work on subduing the mind, being able to have a calm, abiding ability to bring my attention somewhere, and we cultivate spiritual merit. Now, spiritual merit is much more than just good karma. Right? Spiritual merit is that I'm cultivating good, ethical, virtuous behavior, doing healthy, virtuous things for the benefit of all beings, for this path to enlightenment. I'm doing it for a purpose, something beyond just I want some good stuff later, right? Good karma, maybe I'll get a good car, a good job, something like that. But the idea that I'm on this path of cultivating my virtue for the benefit of all beings, now I'm cultivating a spiritual merit. So what happens is, over this time on the path of accumulation, I've accumulated spiritual merit. I've been able to really develop my mind to where it's not running all over the place. And now I have this really incredible platform, this refined piece of technology of the mind, that I can now bring in Vipassana practice, the insight practice. This practice that really seeks to examine the nature of who I am, the nature of phenomena. And so I start engaging in those practices, which brings us to the next path, which is preparation. So the path of preparation then becomes, in this path of accumulation, I've really created these good conditions. And now I've got the technology, the ripe conditions, the environment to really sink into the practices of understanding the nature of phenomena itself. And so I engage in those practices of Vipassana aspect. This is going to bring me over time to a direct realization of the nature of who I am. And it's the path of seeing. So in the path of seeing at this stage, I get direct non-dual experience of myself, the world that it is, and I experience it. And first it's in little tidbits, moments, flashes, things that happen. We get little tastes. But if I engage in it with the platform of shamatha, then I'll actually have a mind that's prepared to really experience it at its full depth. And over time, I will actually create, these conditions that allow me to no longer fall for any delusive experiences of the nature of phenomena, recognize my nature. And at that point, at this point, you sort of, you're at this, what we call the first of 10 levels of bodhisattva. And then as you get that experience directly, you enter into the next one. So let's see, actually that was path of meditation. Now path of meditation. Now you take this direct experience of non-dual nature of phenomena, and you go through the other 9 stages of a bodhisattva, really resting in the nature of phenomenon, and you remove even the most subtle obscurations, which leads to no more learning, at which time you're a full Buddha. So it's a very clear outlined path, very clear and very outlined. And the thing about that path is that there's very fundamental pieces that we can engage in, and we need to be where we are. And if we can recognize that and really go at it in a very thoughtful way, we can really get rid of all the delusions, and we can really engage in life, even in this lifetime, in an extremely meaningful and clear way. But what we can't do is think, well, I'm going to engage in advanced practice, but I'm going to yell at my neighbor, right? Just doesn't work. Foundationally, I need to cultivate a really good heart and attitude that's based in reality, that recognizes that every living being and every person I come in contact with is an opportunity for me to grow spiritually, which is much more accurate. Because the other mind says that other people are putting my life to make me miserable, and other people are making me happy, and then those labels change, and I just get caught in that trap. And when I recognize that every single event and moment in my life is ultimately an opportunity for me to get out of the prison of samsara, to cultivate merit and wisdom, where is there an event that is not an opportunity to cultivate merit and wisdom? There isn't, if I'm present for it. But what happens is we fall into the trap of, we were talking earlier about self-importance, self-cherishing attitude is the way my teacher called it, self-cherishing attitude. And that's really, I want the world to be a particular way. And man, why not? And all that other stuff's good, fine, interesting. But I got heated seats, and I got a vacation coming up, and all that meditation and working on mental afflictions, when I'll do that? I'll do it when it hurts. And that, I'll go do my thing. And so what I do is I keep falling into conditioned existence. I keep falling into delusion, and I only even think about this when the pain gets great enough, and I might start to see, do I have to keep doing this? Do I have to keep doing it? So that's where, like a community like this, right? Here we are once a week talking about reality. At work, we're not talking about reality. At work, we're caught up in self-importance and my role and my job and your duties and that duties and how I'd like things to be and how it should be and how we get frustrated and things ought to be like that. And this whole phenomena of mind takes over in a way that has no basis in actually how things appear, arise, and exist. So I spend an hour and a half a week on trying to cultivate some clear mind, clear view, and then I'll spend the rest of my week engaged in delusion. So it's a tough battle, right? Tough battle. So community, community, a daily practice, consistency, along with some clear understanding of what the heck I ought to be doing instead of just jumping from one thing to the next. One of my teachers, he's very, very clear on the idea of path, not circle, right? Path. If I'm on a path, I know what I'm doing, I know why I'm doing it, and I know where it's going to take me. It's very clear. And so we don't just jump from one thing to another thing, to another thing, to another thing. And if we're doing many things, we know how they fit into a path. And so this idea of a path to enlightenment, something to engage in. And some fundamental practices, ethics, concentration, wisdom. Ethics, good behavior, stop doing things that create, this mental delusions. And then bring some wisdom about the impermanent nature and interdependent arising of things. And there's really not much to get caught up in that would get you angry. Because fundamentally, anger exists in my mind, and its basis requires misperception. So if I'm angry about something, I'm delusional. Now, that's verifiable, right? That's not just something said. And so, as long as that delusion appears to be real, I'm going to have a problem. But if I actually verify it, if I realize it, then it's going to be hard for anger to arise if there's nothing to support it. So that's where a practice of really paying attention, of mindfully paying attention to how my thoughts and feelings and labels give rise to these feelings. And then are these feelings, this anger, resentment, jealousy, fear, even happiness, joy, whatever, are they based in something that is actually true, verifiable? And so that's what we want to check. Because if we can check that, then you'll just cut the root out that gives rise to these things. So we want to explore that in our daily life. So we want to use the practice as we get ready for renunciation. You're not going to really enter into renunciation unless it makes sense, right? Unless you feel some drive that this has basis and truth and that you've checked it out. And we encourage people to check it out. Not because somebody said so, not because it's in a book. Why... where is anger? Is a mental state. How does it arise? What's it based in? And to start checking out and see if it doesn't come from some sense of self-importance in a person based on some things that don't really hold up under scrutiny. And if you start doing that enough, you start realizing, wow, the real source of my mental and emotional suffering is here, not there. And when you get that, you're ready for renunciation. Then you enter the path of accumulation. And now you're willing to do the work. Because you can see, I don't want to. My life here is limited. And I do not want to be subject to a mind that is dragging me around, destroying happiness and joy. That is my core nature, is this blissful, luminous mind and Buddha nature. And I have all the conditions right now to work on that. And then we enter into this path. And then we'll have some stability for that path. We'll be able to engage in a practice as boring as watching your breath. Right? Really? You're watching your breath? Really? Again? Come on, don't you have one of those cool ones? Some of that blissful stuff, the love stuff. Where's those meditations? That's more, but when you actually stick through a meditation to where something as mundane as a breath, provides you access to the luminous, blissful nature of your own mind. It's better than anything you'll ever experience. But you're not going to get there unless we dig. And it's not to say other meditations aren't helpful and useful and that you engage in. As a matter of fact, it's nice to keep our practice fresh and nurturing with different meditations on from time to time, but in a thoughtful way. So that's why we always start with shamatha. We start with shamatha because it's fundamentally, the foundation that allows all the other meditations to work, a lot better as we engage in them. So I'm going to pause there before we enter into the Bodhisattva path and just see if anyone had any questions or thoughts, because I rarely make time for those. We always go so right up to the end. Yes?
Where do, maybe jumping back a little bit, where do these ethics come from? How are those?
Yeah. So the Buddha, it depends how we do math and what numbers mean, whether they're symbolic or authentic. But it is said there's something like 84,000 root delusions, which are unhealthy behaviors and things that keep us in samsara. And since I can't list all 84,000, the Buddha was kind enough to give you a top 10 list. Okay, so he basically said that, and it's actually coming up a little bit in the text here, that of all of the things that get us in trouble, there's basically top 10 that really are non-virtuous actions. So we've covered those before, right? The top 10 non-virtuous actions. And so those are body, speech, and mind. First three of the body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. These are just fundamental. Speech, which is lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, idle gossip. And then of the mind is this sort of, it's not exactly jealousy, it's, what is it when you want what somebody else has? Covetousness, yeah, thank you, covetousness. Wrong view and ill will. And so I think we might actually have those coming up. But the idea is that those fundamentally, but at the root is the wrong view. At the root is the wrong view. The view of myself and the view of other things, and this idea that if I yell at somebody in anger, that somehow that's not going to create suffering in my life. We don't think it will, right? Somebody tries to get in my face, and I tell them off, I set them straight, and then I'm pretty proud about it, and set that guy straight, man. Well, what did I just do? I just watered the seeds of anger in my own mind, and I've actually rationalized it so that the next time someone treats me like that, I've just justified, I get angry, look, I treated that guy, I'm going to do this too. And I keep reinforcing a mental state of anger, and I'm not recognizing that the anger is really rooted in a deluded state of mind that thinks something shouldn't have been the way it was, and based on some idea that if it was a different way, I would somehow have some really lasting happiness, which, by the way, doesn't hold up foundationally. So we have these 10 non-virtuous and then the 10 virtuous to engage in. Did you? Yeah. Pat? No, go ahead.
On your way through what you said a moment ago, became aware that you referred a number of times to every interaction as an opportunity for me to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't there a possibility that that's really another selfish, self-important action for me? You mentioned last week or a week or two ago, look at somebody in the eye and make them important or smile at them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I say, great, my practice just got better because I looked you in the eye,
Mm-hmm.
is what I find, I'm trying to find the intention that I'm looking you in the eye to make your life better,
Mm-hmm.
not to make my practice better.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any conflict there, or is it one and the same and I'm being too literal?
No, it's always a good question, and it comes up. We talked, it was at the retreat, I guess, on Saturday. We talked about this idea about desire. And there are wholesome desires. Dalai Lama sometimes calls it being wisely selfish. And the idea is that desire in and of itself is not a bad thing. I mean, it's a necessary thing. How else are we going to achieve enlightenment if I didn't have the desire to do the work to become enlightened, to help other beings? So there is a wholesome desire to be compassionate, to cultivate to really recognize and be liberated for the benefit of all beings. That is a wholesome desire. So if my desire is to engage in practice and make every moment, and I actually said every moment is not just a moment of practice, but every moment is an opportunity to cultivate merit and wisdom, to actually grow, to actually grow. And recognizing that and engaging in that and having a sense that this is helping me on the path is helpful. But then if we turn it to ego and to spiritual pride, then we're screwed again. Because look at me, man. Like somebody, a friend of mine out in Michigan, they were talking about this person who every time they see him, they report to him how many days they've meditated and how many minutes and how many hours, and that could be a problem, right? Then we start looking like I'm a better practitioner than this and then that is self-important, delusive, and just cuts away at everything.
So if I count how many people I smiled at and made feel happy, and I had a goal every day, that would be a little backwards. Just teasing.
But you know what that necessarily wouldn't be? Let's say I'm making a concerted effort. I want to make sure I'm smiling at least 108 people just because I picked a number of 108. It's one in them all, and I'm just going to really focus on that. And that I feel that was a good practice, and I feel good about that. That's not a problem. But then when I start telling everybody that I'm, yeah, and so, but it's really okay and actually very nurturing to have wholesome desire and to engage in a practice and to feel good about your practice. To feel good about your practice. That's good. Totally wonderful. Yeah. But then when we get spiritual pride in it, pride is one of the mental afflictions that just cuts right through everything. So that's that line, right?
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, Henry.
Why is it possible to recognize sort of fearful delusions in yourself and recognize that they're not true and still be afraid of them at the same time?
That's an excellent question, isn't it? I think it's, for me, I have found it to be the most fascinating question. But it's a very straightforward answer, is that intellectually knowing something will not eliminate it, right? Our habits and tendencies. So one way of looking at karma, and I really like this way of looking at karma because it's so tangible, is that karma is nothing more in a sense, on one level, it's more in other complicated ways, than the habits and tendencies I've created. So when I've been fearful and I've done this and I've got triggers and I have these emotional, to use a Western psychology view, I have an emotional database of every time I was mistreated or if somebody hurt me or something happened or it's traumatic. It's stored in my consciousness. And then I've reacted to that over years. And so that's pretty hardwired. And so one view of that's karma. I've created these habits and tendencies and I'm fearful around this and, for whatever reason, my daughter just can't look at a snake, right? And that's the thing. But you can't just say, well, you know what, honey, snakes won't hurt you. And she knows that. It's on a TV. But she's not going to watch a TV with a snake. She's going to be covered up. And so intellectually knowing it doesn't help much, right? Because we're so hardwired already. It's a part of our conscious being. So in order to eliminate it is that we need to go through 3 wisdoms. Okay, so wisdom 1 is knowing. Wisdom 2 is really examining it, really spending some time contemplating it, analyzing it. I've noticed this fear arise. It arises in this way, and here's its cause, and I've identified it. So in a typical sort of Western psychology way, we've done therapy with it, right? We've, this happened to me when I was a kid, this thing here, I get it, and this arises when I'm in these situations. And then I actually do some contemplative process and realize that that's really not going to hurt me. I'm not that person anymore. And then I can bring it to the third wisdom, which is the wisdom of meditation. And then really take that realization that I've gotten now that I've dug deep and meditate on that realization. And so then it goes from an intellectual understanding to an embodied experience, which will really cut through. There's a really good meditation that we have in the mindfulness community called Transforming Unskillful Events, where you bring a situation like that. And you, in meditation, kind of look at it, see what arises, and then see how you can respond differently. And you actually do that in meditation. You can really work with it so that the next time you're in that situation, it'll have less trigger. Still have some, but we do it, and then we start to see there's no foundation. Because there's a difference between knowing something intellectually and actually a direct realization of it, really knowing it. It's kind of like if people, I remember stepping off a cliff, with ropes. Anybody done that your first time? Right? Yeah, I know I got 2 ropes here, but they're telling you to step backward. My heart's still going in my throat, right? So we might intellectually know, but our body's saying, you know what? I also know we can fall. And so we work through that. Yeah, and so that's the thing that happens with us is there's a lot of things we know intellectually, but we don't really bring that thought to mind enough. That's the other piece. We don't really dwell on it. We don't contemplate it. We don't bring it to mind. We don't bear it in mind. And that's why we could sit around and go, oh, I totally get how insane living like that is, and then walk out the door and 10 minutes later be totally insane living like that, right? Because it's not what we're watering. When we're out there, 16 hours a day, we're caught up in the stuff. We're not bringing to mind these things. So the more that we bear it in mind, we examine it, and then it becomes this more embodied process. Again, just with our psychology today, we get to literally rewire our brains, and it can just cut right through this stuff. It's interesting. But it takes practice, consistent practice. Okay. We're about to enter into the path of the Bodhisattva. So the idea, as we started with, was that the real source of our mental and emotional suffering was my self-cherishing attitude, me first. And fundamentally, I don't know if I may have time to really start. I'll do a little intro, then we'll do our prayers. Fundamentally, at the root of our problems is we really feel more important than others. Don't we? Aren't my grandkids the cutest? I mean, yours are cute, but mine are adorable. And my family and my kids. And I can have empathy and I can see others suffer. But boy, when it's me, it's a very different thing. And I evaluate everything that happens and every person I see in my life based on how they affect me. Right? Are they people that have my view and thought, or are they people that don't? And if they're people that don't think like I do, they're clearly, morons and don't deserve, our time and energy. And if they are people that think the way, they're really smart. They think the way I think. Yeah, they're really cool too. And isn't it funny how we judge people in our lives strictly on that very fundamental level? How do they treat me? And do they think the way I do? And they hold my views. I was listening to an NPR story and kind of talking about, how that fake news caught on and the psychology behind it and different things. And it's just a preponderance of things. People are really emotionally engaged and want to hear things that agree with them. And so they'll click on those things. And we do that, right? I'd much rather talk to someone who has my worldview and is interesting, like, and will validate what I believe. I'll do that all day long. Do I want to have a conversation with a person who isn't like that? No. We just, everything's through John, center of the universe. So it's really how to break out of that. And the path of the Bodhisattva is one that breaks out of that. The path of the Bodhisattva cuts right through the self-cherishing. And it says, I'm in this for all living beings. And I am willing to devote everything to end the suffering of others. Selflessness at its purest form. And developing that state of mind, imbuing our mind with bodhicitta, the great compassion, becomes really, if there's any kind of a shortcut in this path, that's it. That's the jet fuel. That's the stuff that can imbue progress on the path beyond all else, is that bodhicitta motivation for all living beings. And so at this stage in the text, they enter into, now that we want to engage in this path, we're becoming renunciant. Let's do it with full force. Let's do it with the proper conditions. Let's imbue it with the great compassion, the path of a bodhisattva, the altruistic mind that is willing to devote everything so that no other being suffers. And that's why I engage in my practice. And we prepare our mind like that. And that imbues all of our practices. So when we're smiling at others with bodhicitta on our heart and mind, spiritual merit. Man, then I'm on a path. That's a good reason to get up every day. To eliminate the suffering of all beings. Yeah. It's hard to have a bad day when that's there. So this mind is just, it quite literally is the antidote to mental affliction, period. As we imbue our mind with this great compassion, it provides us the force to then prepare and make our way through the 5 paths. And so that's where we'll be in the text as we get in. I don't want to open that whole can of worms because we have about enough time to do our prayers and dedication. So before we do our dedication, just a few announcements. As usual, every Saturday we have our Chenrei Sig practice at 8:30, and at 10 o'clock we continue with our book study. So if you can make it on Saturdays, we're continuing that. The end of March, we have our annual retreat at Juanita Hot Springs Ranch. So it's a 3-night retreat. And this year it's on the Bodhisattva path. It's on cultivating bodhicitta. So we'll have 3 nights up at Juanita Hot Springs Ranch. It's our 7th retreat there. It's a really nice place to unplug and do practice. Now, Aaron had mentioned that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is going to have some teachings on an upcoming Saturday, and he doesn't have the exact date, but we're thinking that we might offer that as a Saturday offering, to where we'll broadcast it here, bring in the big screen, and that way we'll have teachings from His Holiness live as they're happening in India. So we'll look into that. February 25th, that's it. February 25th, Tenzin Priyadarshi will be in Edwards. And so on that Saturday, we're going to not have an offering here, but we'll drive up to Edwards and spend the day with Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi. It's an incredible opportunity. And so, and then before our dedication, I just want to thank all of you. We also wanted to let people know, if you want to become a member of our Dharma community, please see Aaron and join online. We have basically, we're a very traditional center, so we never charge for anything, right? Dharma is offered freely. And so we've had a base of a few donors that kind of continually every month pay for things. And so anyone that, if you'd like to join and be a part of that and help us grow as a community, please feel free. My teacher always made the point to make sure your needs are met first and then make an offering. So So if you can do that, it's helpful. And also, we really want to build a community. So that's why today we'll have a few snacks afterwards. We'll have some tea, coffee's already made. And so please, even if you were not able to bring anything, have a cup of tea with us and visit for a little bit. I see some people brought some dishes back there, which I'm interested in exploring. So, but it's just a time that the second Wednesday of every month we have some time together and share in community. Okay, so we'll do our dedication. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have accumulated both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate the renunciation that leads through the 5 paths, to imbue it with bodhicitta, and to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Okay, well, thank you all so much one more time. Thanks for joining us online. And as usual, try to stay out of trouble. Huh? Okay.